What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. And today we are here with Ingrid Thompson. So excited to have her here. She is the founder of Healthy Numbers. And honestly, this lady, we've been talking for quite a while before this interview. Actually, it's been a lot of fun to get to know her, but really just her passion around helping people to understand the numbers in their business. And for some of you, you might be like, oh, glaze over, right? Numbers are always those things that we're scared of. But I really loved her model because it was all about numbers are not difficult or complicated. It's how much you spend and how much you make. And as long as you're making more than you spend, you're great. And I loved that model. So I'm excited to have her kind of talk through that and help work us through maybe some of those mental blocks, especially as we kind of get past this plateau that we're all sitting at. So Ingrid, say what's up to everybody and then we'll hop in.
What's up, indeed. I love that because we never say it. It's not an Australian expression.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I think we say g'day, and I do practice my g'day, so the listeners can practice that as well. So yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on. Thanks so much for having me on. And I just hope everyone's still with us. I mean, just because we're talking about numbers, like, don't go, stay. I promise we're going to make this fun.
Yeah, it'll be more fun than even marketing. So let's delve into it. So the very first thing, Ingrid, I want to talk about that methodology. I know you showed me the pyramid, and I love it. So for those of you who, especially on audio, she had this diagram. It's basically a pyramid with 4 levels, and they're like 2 big mental blocks that help you kind of launch to the top of the pyramid. So can you kind of talk through that framework and how you help people in that sense?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting model in terms of how we think about people falling into 4 categories. So the lowest category, or the bottom of the pyramid, if you think about that, is a business that's struggling, a business that never looks at the numbers. They lurch from idea to idea, and they avoid having any conversations. And the big myth at this level is that people think numbers are hard. And then people are either in that level or they move to another level, which is the unpredictable level. They have a business that's unpredictable. They look at their bank account and there's some money there, so they think they're doing okay. Their prices don't change much because they're not really quite sure how to make price changes. And they prefer to listen when it comes to the conversations. They don't avoid them, they listen, but they're never really sure what's happening in a conversation. And the difference between these 2 parts of the pyramid is that there's this fear and ignorance line, what I call a fear and ignorance line. And what happens at people who run a business that's not struggling is that they've got to the point where they start to understand their numbers. And what I say to people is, you learned to be a dentist, or you learned to be a hairdresser, or you learned to be the business that you run. And you weren't born that. You learned how to be it, and you can learn how to do numbers. So if you learned that craft that you have, you can certainly learn this as well. And then there's the consistent businesses. So if you think up the pyramid, you've got these 2 levels, then you've got the next level up. So you've got the 3rd level up, it's consistent. You know, the business is doing well. They run the reports, the accounts are up to state, and I'm doing okay. And then we reach what we call the good enough line. And that's what you and I were talking about, Josh, is that there's that sort of plateau. And that line is the one where it's important to know that it's okay to want more. It's okay to totally understand. It's okay to make your decisions based on data and facts. And it's okay to feel like an equal when it comes to actually making the conversations around money. And I hope for the people that are doing that, following that from a visual point of view, I hope I've painted that picture well. But we sort of go from struggling to unpredictable to consistent to powerful. And the 2 lines we cross is that fear and ignorance line of just numbers can be difficult, but you learned what you've learned and you can learn about numbers. You don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to get to that level. That's what your accountant's for. But, you know, learning to understand them. And then, as you say, there's that plateau where people go, yeah, good enough. Yeah, I'm doing okay. But there's actually another level beyond that, and it's okay to be in that level. Yeah, that feels powerful. It feels empowered. It feels confident. Right. Yeah, it's more than just okay.
And I love that because, you know, in our conversation before this, what we were talking about with that is, I mean, money is one of those things you just have to learn once, and you just have to understand a few simple things. Once you know those things, you'll have them forever. It's not like marketing where it's constantly changing. It's not like, you know, branding or sales or anything. It's a consistent, simple pattern. If if you understand those, then your business will grow. And I love that, because your entire business and your being, everything you're about is around, let's break those two lines. And if
Yeah.
you're, listening to this, you're at that plateau mark, that's probably one of the number one reasons why you haven't been able to get past that point, is because
Yeah.
you've gotten to that settle line, like she's talking about. Like, you've gotten there and you've said, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable, right? I want to grow by word, but then you look at your bank statements and you're like, well, I'm making enough. I'm pretty good. So Ingrid, I do want to ask you, what is really the tipping point that helps you break from that consistency to really thriving?
It is, as you said, it's a mindset, and it's okay to want more. And I think that's where, what happens to people, what do we think about people who have more, and what would you do with more if you had it? And we talked a little bit about that earlier in terms of, what stage of life are you at? What would you do with that? And, for some people, it could be philanthropic. For some people, it could be having a bigger impact. For some people, when you have more profit, when you have more in your business, when you have greater numbers, you can have the latest equipment. Everybody can have the sort of professional training and development that they need. You can have a better team. You can have a bigger team. There's what would you do with more? Would you set up a foundation? Would you do more community work? Like, what would you do if you had more? And, I think it's that sort of having a bigger picture and being the best that you can be at what you are, so that that you can have that greater reach. And that is what helps people get over that line. It's like, what would you do? What would be your legacy? What would be your impact? Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I really think it's all about positioning in your brain, right? Like where we're at. I know for me, and we were talking about this, it's kind of funny that we're both kind of the same way, but for me, every time I get stuck, I feel like I've plateaued. If I'm there for more than a month, I go hire a new coach every
Yeah.
time, because when I hire a new coach, and it doesn't mean my old coach was bad, but what it does is it breaks my paradigm, makes me spend a lot of money, and it allows me to get a new take on it every time my income increases, every single time. And it's been one of the best tools for me. And I don't know if that works for everybody, but I would highly recommend it to you if you're like sitting there like, oh, I don't know what to do next.
And I would endorse that enormously, because, this past 12 months, I've taken really good stock of what I'm doing. And I've hired, in fact, 3 different coaches, and one I'm continuing to work with, because that's the one that's working best for me, and it's the one I need the most help with, actually. But the other 2 have shifted my thinking so much around how I do what I do, and really tapping into the passion of what I believe in. And it's not that it wasn't there, but it's just, when you find new people that challenge your thoughts. I love that Jim Rohn, you are the product of the 5 people you hang out with. And if it's the same people forever, that just doesn't work. We constantly need that new way of thinking. The tide comes in and the tide goes out, and it's different every single time it comes in. Nature doesn't operate in the sameness. We've got a huge tree in our backyard, and this year it has thrown pine scales and seeds all over the place. It hasn't done that for years. Something's different this year, and that's what we need in business. What is the trigger? Is it because we had more rain? Is it because we had less rain last year? So what is it in your business that's the pattern that you can bring in something that's different, that can actually shift you above that line? And if it's a different coach, and I'm firmly with you on that, Josh, the same coach, no, not the same forever. And I have clients that I kick out of the nest. I'm a really good mommy bird. I'm tossing them out to the nest when it's time to go.
And we'll just hope you're never an empty nester in that sense, right?
Never an empty nester. That's right. Because, nature doesn't work that way, does it?
Yeah. And I love that, the way you personified that, because it was like the tree example. You really need to identify what is the kicker for you. I know for me, I can directly tie it to hiring a new coach. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you should just stick with one method. And I would agree, but I think you get a lot of big points from other people, but then you stay true to what you're doing. You stay true to your model and you focus on that, because the fastest way to complication, and like you said, kind of that was erratic, that scale where your business is inconsistent, is when you're constantly trying to be like, new thing, instead focus on the model, get new intake. And for us, I have to spend money. So it kind of wakes me up. I'll be honest. Like
Yeah.
it has to be enough that it hurts.
Yes. And I think, what you said earlier about marketing changes, and, now we're seeing there's some new thing. I don't even know what it's called. Everybody's jumping on instead of LinkedIn and Facebook. There's some other conversation tool people are using. And that's always going to come and go. But your numbers are going to stay the same. Your model is going to stay the same. And so you need different people to help you with all the things that are going on in the world. But your fundamentals are going to stay the same. And that's where a new coach comes in. It's where a new training program comes in, and it just takes you to a different place, a different way of thinking. And, there's this beautiful word, obliquity, which is that things happen indirectly, that you might set off in this direction, but something happens. It's a bit like serendipity, it's that unexpected. And, I think that's when you start to work with someone different and you say, okay, so what is this person, I need to learn this, but who knows, you might meet someone through that, or they might trigger off a thought pattern that just sends you in a different direction. Yeah, we can't ever really know what's around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring up that exact. So Clubhouse is probably the one you're talking about.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have the word doesn't stick with me. It doesn't mean anything.
And it's really funny. So I got invited to that like months and months ago, joined it, forgot about it. I'll be completely honest. But just today I got invited to do a room on there. And it was really interesting because people know I'm kind of opinionated. And so it's kind of funny because they want me to say something and I'm like completely against it sometimes. But we went on there and somebody asked me, he's like, so how do you see a Clubhouse being like the way to grow your podcast? Is it going to kill the podcast and everything? And I'm like, it's going to come and go. That's how Facebook's doing that right now. People thought Facebook was going to live forever. They just lost like 30% of their users over a month because of some dumb thing, right? And it's crazy to me that people will rely on these platforms. And it brought back to me, I had a guy brought on here, Carl Allen, you may know him, but very, very successful guy. And he's like, Josh, you can either be rich or you can be famous. You can't be both. And I thought that was so intriguing. And it really aligns with what you're talking about, Ingrid, is it's all about understanding the numbers. It's all about, if you want to be in business, be in business. If you want to be famous, go be famous. But everybody who's in business feels like they have to become famous in order to be successful in business. And they don't go hand in hand. Some of the most successful people are in like the most non-sexy industries. HVAC. This is the story I was telling on there. There's a guy I know, he makes $60 million a year in an HVAC, some type of HVAC. He builds products for HVAC. It's not a sexy industry. You're not going to post on social media, I just built a really cool new HVAC thing, right? People are like, don't care, right? So I love that you're tapping into that and sharing that. So I want to ask you this, Ingrid, especially with the people who have plateaued and they've said, okay, which direction should I go? What would you recommend for people? Do you feel like they should pivot, or should they double down on what they're doing?
Oh, it's such a great question. And in fact, yesterday I was having a coaching session with one of my private clients, and she is in that. We were looking at some of her numbers, and this is where the numbers are so vital. So she's past the basics. She gets that the amount that comes in is, got to equal the amount that comes out. And so she's looking at where are her sales, who in the last 6 months, who in the last 12 months, like where is the patterns of her sales? And just through analyzing this, we discovered that there's these 3 customers of hers that are doing phenomenal amount of, she makes a product and she sells it to them, and then they sell it on to the customers. And she said she hadn't realized that these 3 were standing out from everybody else until we did this analysis of the last 6 months. And again, she's somebody who had kind of been doing this but had lost track of doing it. So that's that kind of that those middle 2 layers where you're sort of doing it but you're not doing it very well, or you're doing it but you're not doing it consistently. And so she said, oh, so the first thing she said to me was, we need to go find more of them. And I said, really? Is that exactly what you need to do, go find more of them? Or do you pay so much attention to those 3 that they go even more gangbusters for what you're doing, and other people hear about that and find out about that, and then they come looking for you? So that you do double down on what you've already got working really well, find out who that is working for, or do you go out and find a bigger market? And I think that's your question, and that is, when you've got the data, you can see that. And so then that's the question, go back to them and see, okay, so what is the better strategy here? Do we analyze using the numbers, using the data? Do we analyze and say, is it beneficial for me to go after more of that, or do I double down and give them more products? Do I give them, a better range? Do I give them better service? Do I provide in-store experiences? What do I do with that? So I think, it's industry specific, and that's where, when you analyze the data, it gives you the power, and having a new coach, having a new perspective is a way to have a look at that. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that was a fantastic
Yeah.
answer, because there really is no set answer. Hence why this podcast exists, right? There's so many different directions you can go, but we should focus on one thing, like you said, right? Like what is the thing that is providing the income? I know for me, all of the clients that I've worked with one-on-one, we really don't do a lot of that anymore, but they get annoyed by how often I say it. I'm like, what is the ROI activity? What is making you money? And we only focus on that. And they're like, okay, but I want to be on Clubhouse. I want to be on Instagram. And I'm like, why? You have no money coming from that direction. Why don't you double down on growing your email list, which you are great at, that is producing income? Like that, what's the ROI activity? And so I love that you bring that. And I think that dovetails really well into your diagram you showed me. I know we're coming up to the end interview here, but I want you to cover this because it was such a cool kind of final piece that I think you could share is the diagram for the
futures.
Yes, the futures. Thank you. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. So I just want to say about your coaching program and group coaching, because I am such a fan of group coaching, because the thing that didn't happen yesterday in that one-on-one session with that client is nobody else gets to hear that story unless we share it. And that is the huge benefit to being in a group environment, where when you hot seat one particular person, then the other 10 people or 20 people or 100 people in that group are actually getting the benefit of that story. And while not everybody has that exact example, money and data and analyzing works for all of them. So, that's, just to your point about group coaching. Okay, so with me, if you draw, do you want me to put the model up? Is that easier for the visual people?
Let's do it. For those who are watching, I think this will be very, very beneficial to them. It's a very simple diagram, everybody.
It is. And so if you're listening, you can do it with me. So if we start with a piece of paper, and in the middle of the side here, we have, this is the point of today. And in 12 months time, there is a 12 months time point. It's going to be here anyway. Doesn't matter what happens. There's all kinds of things are going to happen, and there's going to be a 12 months point. And we could just go in a kind of straight line or a wavy line between the 2 points. Alternatively, there is a point where we're worse off than we currently are right now in the 12 months time. And if you think about drawing a line that goes, it's a sort of a red drifty line that goes down towards that future point. Now, it could be in any environment. It could be COVID kilos is a good example of drift. We eat a chocolate bar, and then we have another packet of chips, and we sit on the couch, and we don't go to the gym. And it doesn't happen overnight. We don't end up with 15 kilos overnight, but we do end up with the extra COVID kilos or whatever that might be. There's also a point where we would be better off in the future. And this is a line that works along decisions and actions. We take actions on the decisions that we make, and we move towards this future better place. And right now, today, we are as close as we're ever going to be to being on any of these lines. And what happens in this future place is that these gaps are huge. And this is why goals can feel so excruciating. And I think this is one of the key things about this model, is that when you are here and you think that's where you wanted to be, in 12 months time, it's so far away, it feels excruciating. But here, it's the closest you're ever going to be. And if we work along this with decisions and actions, whatever those are, that's how we end up there. Or the alternative is to end up in drift. And I think there's, I use this with dentists, and dentists use this with their patients. And I think a lovely analogy for this is, you don't just clean your teeth once a week for an hour. You clean your teeth a couple of times a day for a short amount of time. Decisions and actions are small things we do regularly, and it's what gets us to the future. We don't just get to Sunday and give our teeth a clean for an hour. So thinking about business, what are the small things we do every single day? Pay attention to the numbers, pay attention to our clients, run the reports, do the analysis, whether it's small amounts of time, weekly, daily, monthly. That's what takes us to that place in the future, so that gap between where we are and where we want to be isn't so huge. So I think it's a terrific model. I'll send you a picture of this one if you like, Josh.
I'd love to. We'll actually probably link that in the description as well so people can see it, because it's so true. And I love the decaying teeth example, right? Because we all kind of know you need to have those little habits. But the reality is that, and I'm not going to say this with brushing your teeth because you should brush your teeth twice a day plus, right? But in business, we feel like, okay, well, I've got to do it daily. But sometimes even if you miss and you're doing it 3 or 4 times a week, that
Yeah,
is still allowing you to get that upwards progression that people don't realize. Because what
yeah.
typically happens in business is we set a goal, we get all excited about it for a week, and then the next week we miss a day and we're like, okay, well, that goal is stupid, I'm not doing it anymore, and we quit. And instead of saying, okay, we know I missed a day, so I'm going to do it the next day.
That's right, because we get further and further away. And this, this isn't a straight line either. The up line is a wriggly line. But what happens when we make decisions and we take actions is that even if we have 1 or 2 bad days, our bounce back is better because we're on that upwards trajectory. But that drift, and I think how easily we can drift. I love to swim. We go to the beach, we're between the flags, the surf is raging, and any minute now we're outside the flags because we drift, because something wishes us, and that'll be life. Something knocks us off course and we're drifted out of the flags. And so we make that concerted effort to come back in. So yeah, I think visually, and thank you for this being a visual podcast as well as a podcast, but it certainly helps for people to be able to see the visual. So
Yeah, and I do
I
like.
hope that's helpful. I love this model. I think this model is magic.
Yeah,
Mm.
I love it. So we'll link that in the description as well. But Ingrid, we're already at the end of the interview here. So
I know.
2 questions for you. The first one is, where can people get access to you and to Healthy Numbers?
So my website, I was going to say my internet, my website is healthynumbers.com.au. And the very best way to connect personally with me is through LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn fan.
Me too.
And I have a podcast and I have a book. They're called So You Want to Start a Business. And yeah, but healthynumbers.com.au is the very best place to find me, or LinkedIn personally.
Love that. So we'll link those in the description so everybody can connect with you as well. And
Thanks.
just one final thing for you, Ingrid. So if you could leave one final parting piece of guidance, what would that be?
Get in touch with your numbers. Just figure those numbers out. And whatever they are, they can expand and be more. And even if you feel like you understand them, dig a little deeper, because the more you dig into the numbers, the more they reward you. It's the gift that keeps on giving.